Hey, and welcome to video 2 for content. In this video, as I've expressed already, we will be looking at on-page SEO factors when you're trying to rank your SaaS website. So jump in, on-page factors, right? What are they? This is a list, a relatively comprehensive list, but probably not as deep as it could go if I really wanted to get nitty gritty. But these are the list of the main factors, on-page factors that you need to consider as you put up new pages on the site. Now, this is going to look overwhelming. Obviously, it's going to look like it's a little bit too much. But frankly, there's a lot here that basically becomes just really easy to do. It becomes really rhythmic. It becomes really normal and like almost, you just don't even think about it like driving a car. And you don't really need to stress too much. These are best practices that I want you to implement on each page. And if you do that on each page, you're going to be in a good position SEO before you bring in a third party, before you bring in an agency, before you do whatever, or you're going to be in a great position for as you learn SEO, knowing you don't have to go back and rechange everything and fix everything all over again. So moving forward, we've got URLs, keywords, title tags, content, images, links, and technical, right? Now, I'm going to break each one of these factors down. I'm going to try and give you a decent understanding of what each one of those actually is, what that means, what you've got to worry about for them, what you don't have to worry about. Let's jump in. So first, on-page factors, we're going to look at keywords and URLs, right? So first of all, let's look at keywords. So the main on-page factors for SEO is when you're going to be ranking for a keyword, you want that keyword to be in the content, right? You want it to be, part of the content, part of the thing you display on the page. So that means having it in a number of key places here that we can add in together actually, because they're helpful to make sure that we've got these actually structured down. So they should be in your page title, which we'll cover in a minute. They should be in your H1. They should be in your content. And they probably should be somewhere in the alt text of an image that you need to think about that as well. So those are the main places that we're going to have it. Now we cover all of these in a minute, so don't worry too much if that's, you're not aware of all these spots. We'll get into that. So you want to have these keywords, right? The important thing to remember with keywords is you want to choose one main keyword for your for each page. That's what you want to optimize each page for, one main keyword. You can have secondary keywords that you want the page to rank for as well. But in this example that I put out here, how to scale a SaaS might be your main keyword, right? So you can see the main title of the page, so the H1 would be how to scale a SaaS. You can see the first sentence there has how to scale your SaaS in it, minor variation, but it's the same sort of thing as keyword, right? So what you want to do when you write for you publish a page for a sort of keyword, you want to make sure that it's in your content as many times as is normal. So you want it in the minimal places, these page title, H1, content, and alt text. And then you want it to be in the rest of the content just as much as makes sense. How to scale your SaaS or how to scale a SaaS is hard to jam into a lot of things, but you might talk about a SaaS, you might talk about scaling SaaS businesses, things like that. They're going to be close variants, so Google's going to understand and pick up, and you can write pretty naturally there and still have that happen, as long as the main thing that you want to rank for, the one that you want to see your Ahrefs ranking come up for you, the one you want people to mainly search and click on you for, is in those key spots. So don't overstuff your keywords, right? We covered this in the last video. Good content is not keyword stuff. So that means don't try and put it in every paragraph. Don't put it in every second paragraph. Just put it in where it makes sense after these main points that I've already given you. So that's keyword frequency, right? Keyword frequency, natural as possible. Second, use your target keyword in the first 100 words. That's pretty much the only way where most people will say, like, look, you're probably going to want to just try to make this fit. Now, sometimes it's really impossible and you probably can get away with it, right? It's just a general rule of thumb for most SEOs that this actually works really well. If it doesn't work for your branding, if it doesn't work for the type of keyword it is, that's okay. Publish it and wait and see how you rank with that. Maybe even make that test later on and try and put it in and see if it improves. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, right? This 100 word thing is a little bit of a rule of thumb, but I would say it's a good best practice if possible. Third of all, LSI keywords. So LSI keywords, as I have mentioned, are these tertiary, secondary keywords, right? So they're basically things that are related to the thing you're writing about that you want to include in your content. Now, I could go into how to find them. But frankly, it's not so difficult to just think about what that is. If you write normally, you're going to write with those in it. If you're going to talk about how to scale a SaaS, you may talk about, outbound versus inbound. You may talk about SEO versus ads. You may talk about social and YouTube. You may talk about SDRs and email marketing and all that sort of stuff, right? Because you're thinking about scaling, you talk about growth loops, right? You're going to talk about all these things, and that's going to be normal. Google sees that across the web. You're going to do the same thing, and it's going to be pretty easy. Alternatively to that, there is a way to find these. I can show you very, very quickly. I wasn't going to, but now that I'm in, I feel like I need to, right? So if I go in and I sign into my Ahrefs account, this is one of the easier ways to find them if you've got this. And I've said before that this is generally one of the easier things to do is to do this. So if we put how to scale a SaaS, I actually haven't looked at what the volume is for this. Okay, cool. So let's put SaaS marketing, maybe. It's close enough, right? Well, SaaS marketing automation, right? So one easy way, if you do have a tool like this, like Ahrefs, you can actually go here and you can say, also rank for and also talk about, right? So pages were ranked for SaaS marketing automation. When you look that keyword up in something like Ahrefs, you'll have something like also talk about. So pages who rank for this also talk about these things, and you can go and view these keywords. Now, I don't want you to think about including all these. I don't want you to get too nitty gritty. People tend to over optimize and get too involved, but you can see how the list of things here are very common, right? You wouldn't expect to rank for SaaS marketing automation and time and email, right? You wouldn't expect that, but you would expect that, like Google would expect to see some of these keywords on your page. So that can help you in terms of like making sure you include bits and pieces. I think the better way to do this generally is if you're going to actually think about how you would, what keyword you would include, instead of going to here, you would go to the competitors, the people who already rank for this, and you would start looking at them and you'd say, what are they writing about? What do they have on the page that I might want to include, right? And you would go and read, read or skim at the very least the top 5, maybe 10, and just go, okay, now I've got a good understanding of what I want to talk about. I've got a good understanding of what other people talk about. And I think there's some parts in there I want to add, but I know that at the minimum, Google's rewarding people who talk about email marketing, outbound, SDRs, growth loops, etc. right? And you can go through that process, right? I don't want it to get any more complicated than that. Most SEOs overcomplicate it. Most people who just start to learn SEO overcomplicate it. And I think you're in a very real danger then of making SEO so complicated you don't want to act on it, and also so complicated that like briefing or writing anything is just this painful experience of just trying to find every little optimization thing, when ultimately you could have just written naturally, probably would have included 80% of that by just way of talking about it and ranked way faster than take an extra week of trying to figure this out. How am I going to work all this in? And then at the end of the day, you publish something that doesn't rank or would have ranked in the same spot anyway. So that's it. I'm going to leave that there on terms of LSI keywords, right? If you don't have that, there's all sorts of keyword tools that you can use, keywords everywhere. There's maybe things like Answer the Public that you could put some search volumes in, search queries in, and it would spit out a list of like things that are related, sorry. But I think the best and most natural way is to just read what other people are writing, understand that those are the things that Google has already rewarded. So obviously that makes sense to Google, right? And obviously to the users. So that's it. So now we know, don't stuff your keywords, but use your keyword in the key places: page title, H1, content, alt text. And there's one more in there that we need to cover actually, URLs, right? And we know that LSI keywords, or keywords that are related to the topic you're talking about, should be included in the content. But to do that, you want to make sure that you are being natural when you find it. On-page factors, so URL. So the main points to remember for URL is you want a short one, or relatively short URL. You want to have the target keyword in the URL, and make sure that the URL structure overall for your site is optimized for SEO. Right? So you can see here, I've got how to scale a SaaS, still is the same thing as in the last slide, but I've got a URL where we've changed it to how to scale SaaS, right? So it's a short URL, right? My keyword might be that complete thing. I want to rank for that. However, I can see that like how to scale a SaaS starts to get a little bit too long. So the best thing you can do when you're talking about short URLs is you can say, hey, I want this URL to have somewhere between 3 and 5 words max, right? So after the / I want 3 to 5 words max. I don't want any more than that. It's going to get too lengthy. I would say 3 to 4 actually is probably better, but you may squeeze 5 if it's a short one. So I've got how to scale SaaS here. I've eliminated the A. You don't need to have these sorts of stop words in every URL. So if your keyword is, you know, how do I build a cubby house or something like that? You could put it to, you know, how to build cubby house, right? Your URL instead of the entire thing. A lot of CMS systems like WordPress and stuff will fill this in for you automatically when you set like a page title. You can obviously change those in pretty much all of them, and you can just alter this to be a little bit shorter and a little bit neater and a little bit nicer. There's a number of reasons why we do this, and the reasons for that are reason 1, easy for Google, right? It's similar to your main keyword. It's easier for Google to understand that, and the stop words Google can eliminate and won't put too much attention on anyway. Reason number 2, and the big one, when people see this URL inside of their browser, when they open the page, or even before when they're Google searching, they can usually see the URL, right? So it's relevant to users, you know, plus big G, the Google, right? So it's relevant to them, right? So they're the main 2 reasons why you would want to include this. You want to make sure that you are being descriptive in the URL, but not making it too long, right? You want it to be readable, skimmable, fast, and easy for people and for Google. We just went over having your target keyword in the URL. So when you do, you want to make sure you eliminate stop words where possible, right? And if I spell eliminate correctly, there you go, right? Other than that, that's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. That's how you want to optimize your URL. Now, if I'm going to say here, optimize your URLs for SEO, it sounds like we've already done that, right? The only other thing I'm saying when I say this is you want to make sure that the site structure is optimized, right? Now, what does this mean? We already looked at this in terms of looking at technical structures and things previously, but it means that if you've got a blog section, you know, your blogs can go on a /blog. If it means that you've got a resource section, it goes on a /resource, like that. You have a consistent way to organize everything, and similar topics or similar things stay together. So you can put everything in a blog under /blog. That's totally fine. You don't have to have /blog, /email, and then have /SEO, and then /whatever, and then have more blogs under that. That would be too much, right? You don't want to overcomplicate. You don't want to oversimplify. Basically, if you follow best practices by looking at most of the big guys in the space, right? If you were to look at, you know, like I've got up here, you can see I've got MailChimp up here. You could have a look at these guys and say, well, then what have they got in terms of like resources, MailChimp 101 guides and tutorials, you know, how they set this out? This is under /help, I don't know, or inspiration maybe. Resource is probably better. I should have gone into this, guides and tutorials, case studies. I can't find their blog section all over this. Maybe they're not the best example, but you get what I mean, right? Most guys are going to have, most people are going to have the same sort of thing, right? Maybe a better example would be look at Ahrefs itself. So if I was to look at Ahrefs, go to their academy, I could see resources, blog, see blog, all their blogs here, marketing 101. So /blog /marketing 101, right? /martech. If you go and have a look at this stuff, you'll see all of their landing page stuff here. So this is a category for all the keyword stuff. So you can see how they've got this sort of stuff set out. But if I because this is just a category page, if I click any one of these, it's back to blog keyword research, right? So you just want to make sure that you've got the structure right, because you don't want like 15 different things. You don't want /blog, /keyword research, /keyword, like how to do keyword research, right? It just gets too much. It gets too much. It's complicated for users. It's complicated for you to set all this up, and it's just unsightly and ugly. Another thing too is it'll probably get cut off in Google search results, right? And you want people to see that. You want people to see the full URL and feel like have confidence in what they click. Cool. So that's on-page factors. That's URLs, right? So let's power on. So just a quick recap again. Make your URL short and include the target URL. 3 to 5 words max is generally a good rule of thumb. Make sure it's short because you want it to be easy for Google to understand. You want to be relevant to users in Google, right? They're the reasons you're doing this. You want to make sure that you stay with that. And in terms of optimizing URLs for SEO overall, it'll affect your on-page and stuff if you have this really complicated like subfolder structure, blog /something/something, and then finally the page. So you want to make sure you keep things as simple as possible. Next, content, right? This is a content thing. We're finally talking about actual content, right? Or at least to some degree. So main factors to remember about content is that you want to make sure your title of your blog post is wrapped in a H1 tag. This is going to sound like a no-brainer for most of you, I'm sure, but the title of your blog post should be in a H1 tag. A H1 tag carries importance and carries weight, right? You want to make sure that Google understands that, hey, this URL says how to scale a SaaS, right? Or how to scale SaaS, relevant to the H1 tag, which is the main topic of the page. It's what you're telling Google with this H1 tag is how to scale a SaaS also. Makes perfect sense. Same thing with H2, right? H2 is a bit actually similar, but different, right? H2, because it's under H1, they're smaller generally, it's generally a smaller title or whatever. It's telling Google that this heading is a subheading, right? So your main heading is how to scale a SaaS. Then your next thing might be outbound sales is one way to scale a SaaS. That would be a H2. The next H2 might be inbound sales. That would be another H2, right? And then underneath these H2s, you would have your H3s and whatever. So the scale of your H1, H2, like H3, H4, all that sort of stuff actually matters, right? And I've seen really good improvements for a number of clients where we've gone in, we've read their content, we've seen where people were doing this. Maybe they were just doing lists, or they were, there was a title to a piece of content, but it was just bolded text, right? And in some cases that makes sense, but in most cases, what you want to do is have this clear hierarchy, because that tells Google this is nested under this, is nested under this, is nested under this. Google understands that at a large scale, and it wants to see that you're saying the same sorts of things, or that you're reflecting what it's seeing, right? And it doesn't mean if you're, if you've got a good valid reason to not have it like that, then you can't. But general as a rule of thumb, you want to make sure you set that up correctly. So that's 1 and 2. Number 3 is write comprehensive content. We've covered this a couple of times. You can't band and strum enough in SEO as far as I'm concerned. You want to make sure you answer the questions that people ask, right? You want to make sure the content is going to cover the main topics, answer the questions that people were going to ask about that content, and really get into like what they would need to know to solve whatever they might have searched to get there. You should know what they might have searched to get to that page because you're choosing the keywords, right? So if they're looking for a how-to, they want a how-to. If they're looking for when was something or other built, it's a when was something or other built. If they've searched something broad like email marketing, you've got an idea that probably it's an introduction into what is email marketing. Here's what this means. Here are the tools that make sense in this, et cetera, right? So be comprehensive. Cover enough to give somebody an understanding based on what their intent would be, right? Don't go too over, don't go too under. Number 4, we already covered basically, but answer questions, right? If I'm going to read a piece of content, how to scale a SaaS, I might have a number of questions about this. So if I'm looking at outbound sales, what goes into outbound sales? Let's say outbound emails versus calls. Okay, at some point in there, I might want to mention, if I'm the writer, I might want to mention tools, popular tools that people might use. Now, if you are a SaaS provider of, say, some kind of tool like this, an outbound email, outbound phone call, sort of web phone calling solution, I can't remember the name of them right now, but then you would want to mention that, right? You want to mention, hey, we do that. There's a number of other alternatives. We find that the best ones are the ones that do a transcription service and send that to you at the end of every call or whatever, right? Whatever it is, you can include that stuff in there, but make sure you're answering the logical question. If I need a service to do this thing to achieve outbound emails, what are the services? What might they be priced generally? How easy are they to set up? You don't have to have a full paragraph on each one, but you want to hit those points. And number 5 here is block text. So I say block text, I don't mean like have just a wall of text, but I mean block it out, make sure the structure is neat and tidy, make sure it's easy to read and consume and it doesn't scare people off. If you open and you see one of those like pictures of those old newspapers from like the 20s or something, and everything looks like this real big block of text and there's no real design about it, and it's like super overwhelming, right? You want to go somewhere between what people do on LinkedIn, which is just put 2 lines constantly, and underneath like that sort of super blocky text, right? So write like that, make sure that, every paragraph conveys one idea and it's very clear. On-page factors, another one, title tags, right? So title tags are another one that are really important. We mentioned it up here when we talked about our keywords, right? We want our keywords in our page title. I'm going to change this up again just so it's very clear. Title tags, right? Depends on what you like to call it. Some people call it page titles, some people call it title tags. It means the same thing. The H1 is actually your content title, right? Completely different. H1 is on the page. That's this thing here, right? If I go into, say, this page here, or I go into Ahrefs blog, this is their H1. Their title tag isn't on the page. The title tag is what you see in Google, right? It's the blue links you see in Google when you search, you know, how to do keyword research for SEO. Bang, right? You see, this is a page title or title tag. So you want this obviously to be descriptive and include the keyword, yeah? So what does that mean? So obviously for this, you can see that Ahrefs is targeting keyword research. Here we go, how to do keyword research, right? So what you want to do with page titles is you want to make sure that they include your keyword, like keyword research here, and you want to make sure that they're descriptive and they front load your keyword. So if I go back to our slides here, you can see I've said, back down here, front load your title tag, right? What does that mean to front load your title tag? If your keyword is keyword research, you want the front of that to say keyword research, right? So what if I took this out? Keyword research, right? You can see here, just write keywords, 10 free keyword research tools, free keyword research, right? There's a ton of keyword research stuff. So you want to make sure that the keyword is to the front of that page title. It's one of the first words that you mention because you want to make sure that you're giving importance to that. It is a very small ranking factor that your keyword is closer to the front, or at least it used to be. Right now, we really don't know if it's continued or not. So it's become a rule of thumb and a best practice to make sure that you keep it towards the front, right? So you want to do that predominantly. Second, you want to optimize the title tag for CTR. So that means including numbers or brackets like we've done here. You see Backlinko has got 2022. So I searched this recently. You can see it comes up 2022. It lets me know it's an updated guide, right? I don't want anything from 1927. Not that there would be one, but I don't want anything from like, you know, previous years if there's, you know, new things could have changed. So updating these things helps. The other thing you can do to make it sort of optimized for CTR is just include descriptors, right? Be descriptive about what you write. You know, 10 essential on-page SEO factors is one. That could be really important. I could write a new title tag that says, you know, the changes to on-page SEO, your agency won't tell you, right? Because maybe I found out some new stuff, or maybe there's some new industry stuff that, you know, people aren't passing on to clients because it's difficult to do, or because it's, you know, it's not normal practice or whatever. That could be something that people might want to click. So think about that, optimize the title tag for front loading your keyword as much as possible, but make sure it's readable and people will want to click it. You know, it's enticing. This is sort of like a free advertisement, right? If you were to write a Google ad, you would have to write something here to entice a click, and it's the same in this scenario. Number 3, use title tag modifiers, right? So these sorts of things are like this, bracket here. You want to put that in. You want to try and have some branding or something like that. It's not a big deal to have it sometimes. Like you don't have to have it in everything. So a lot of like it's best practice to have your brand here. So like Backlinko is a brand. So you've got on-page SEO, the definitive guide, 2022 dash Backlinko, right? People a lot of the time have these like Backlinko things in, you know, their branding and this dash. Sometimes it's just not plausible because it's a really long title, or to make this descriptive and work really well. It was really hard to do in that short amount of space because you only have about 65 characters, give or take, depending on what characters you use to write one of these page titles, right? So let me show you an example. But basically you want to be like, you want to make sure that you use these modifiers if it's a short page title so that people get to know your brand. But if you can't, it's better to be descriptive, get the click, and then get to know your brand from your site than just seeing it all the time in search and maybe they don't click it, right? So, and then use unique, rich meta descriptions. We'll move on to a moment, but I'm going to show you this title tag tool here that Moz has made. So Moz.com we covered in the last video. They had their SEO introduction thing. You can see here we've got a title tag preview tool, right? So what this does is this basically simulates how Google would display your page title or title tag, right? So you can see that from this other example over here that we had on-page SEO, the definitive guide 2022. So on-page SEO, the definitive guide 2022, right? And bash backlinko. And we can check this, right? Fits. So that's what this tool will do. I'll let you know if you're writing this and you're not completely sure whether this fits or not. Because the way that Google measures these title tags now, it used to be on character count, and now it's on basically pixel width, right? So if you go over a certain pixel width, so if I put in this again, let me put this in again, backlinko, and I put backlinko, the best SEO guy, right? You see how we cut off here and we get these dots? You don't want to do that. You want to use all the space to its best effect and not lose this extra bit of real estate that you could have. And you want people to see this full descriptor. So predominantly, so what you could do is play around with a tool like this, get this written, just have a look. A lot of CMSs, again, like WordPress and Squarespace, will show you a preview as you type it in, which is really handy because you want to know that it fits right in there or aware of that. So generally, if you're publishing something there, you should be able to see this off the bat. If not, the link is in the slides for you. You can copy it out or just click the link when I assume the slides are provided and get that, right? So on page SEO, the definitive guide. So basically that's what you want to do. So if I go back over here and I say use these title tag modifiers, you could say backlinko is this. A lot of people use these use the bar as well. That's a really common one that you can use. It's just as a way to separate the main page title, like what you want people to see as a descriptor to let them know that what they've searched, they found the right thing. And then the bar is there to separate and say brand. And I'm sure you've all seen that and aware of this, at least on a searcher level. Now trying to make you aware of like writing this on the opposite side. Cool. Moving on to meta descriptions. So part of your whole experience, people's whole experience seeing you in the SERP is this meta description here. The black text, on-page SEO, also known as on-site SEO, is a practice of optimizing web page content, et cetera, et cetera. So that's your meta description. Now, the meta description used to be a ranking factor. It isn't anymore. However, it's an important factor for you because CTR is debated, but debated to be one of the SEO ranking factors, right? If you're put in position 3 today and you're left there for 3 weeks, Google will expect you to get a certain % of click-through rate as a third result, or as a first result, right? They'd expect that if you're relevant, you would get a certain percentage of clicks based on what you've written in your page title. So what you want to do with these is you want to make sure that your top page title here is descriptive and your meta description is descriptive as well. Let people know, this is your chance to sort of sell them on the click a little bit more. It's pretty much the same as when you're thinking about writing a Google ad and you're writing the headline and you're writing your description lines, right? This is your little description line that you get to write. Now, this has also got a cutoff limit, as you can see. And if I go back over to here, I believe that Moz also has one of these for meta description. Although it has been quite a while since I've dug this up. So I might have to find one and link it for you. There we go. Here we go. So you can see here, they've got a meta description. Oh no, that's not a tool. All right, I might have to look one up for you guys, but essentially try to just keep it within a certain length here. Try to keep it short and punchy, basically. If you think about writing these the same way that you would write your Google ads, then you'll be fine, right? Alternatively, recommended description between 50 and 160 characters, okay? So I know that I'm going to reference another guy's SEO thing about this, but I mean, it's all the same information and you need to know that, that this is common practice and this is commonplace, right? So you can see here that this is a way to sell people on the click, so make sure you add that in and that you're descriptive in what you are writing there. Also, make sure you add the keyword that you use in. So you want it in your title tag, front loaded to the front as much as possible. And then you want to mention it somewhere or a variation of your main keyword in your meta description as well. So people see, relevance, relevance, relevance. That's the name of the game before people get a click, right? They want to know it's relevant. This is what I'm looking for. Moving on. Okay. Images. Completely different area. Now that we've done all of the sort of adding keywords into the document, and it should be in the URL, and don't add it too much in the text, and make sure you've got it in your page titles here, in your meta description, right? These are all the places you can add that in. Now we're looking at we're starting to move a little bit more towards slightly technical things, right? So images are important. It's important to have multimedia stuff. Google can understand in a lot of cases context of images as well. Obviously, that's why Google image search works so well. They know a dog is a dog, a cat's a cat. They know, diagrams of, process flow diagrams are different to diagrams for other things, right? They understand that. There's a lot of cues that they can take around content. And there's a lot of other ways that the machine learning goes through and basically figures out what these things are. They can read text inside of images, all that sort of stuff. So if you think about images, you need to think about a couple of things. You need to think about first image optimization, right? So that comes down to a couple of factors. Usually it's file type, the actual size of the image in kilobytes, megabytes, whatever, and how you're going to serve those, right? So how fast you can get those to be rendered and loading on a page, right? And all those things sort of go together because that's what image optimization is really about. Serving the right sized relevant image as fast as possible. That's the name of the game. So I've got this picture of the flower here in the table below, purely just to illustrate to you, how the same image can be extremely different depending on the file type. So if we take this 16 megapixel color photo from the top of this table here, you can see that as a PNG, the same photo is 27 kilobytes, but as a JPEG, it's 7, right? So you're losing a ton of kilobytes there. Now imagine you've got a ton of images on a page, right? You're going to have all sorts of different, you're going to have a lot like this. The number of images that have to be called and loaded before your page can show up is going to get larger and larger, and the file size is going to get larger. So people searching on mobile, people with not great internet connections, it's going to take time for your site and your page to load properly. That's a problem for you. It's a problem for Google. Google doesn't like to show people slow loading sites that don't load properly fast enough. And we get more into that a little bit in a minute. So you want to make sure you're serving the right file type, right? So as a rule of thumb, I would say that if the image is going to stay very small in terms of dimensions, 20 by 20, whatever, you can serve JPEGs. Perfectly fine. JPEGs are great. They're a smaller file size generally, and they load faster because of that file size, right? However, if you're going to serve, make maybe a bigger image on a blog post somewhere and you want people to see the details of it, it's better to start thinking about things like PNG potentially. A PNG, the difference between that and JPEG and why it's better to start using a PNG in this scenario is because JPEGs don't scale, right? If you've seen images on the web and the internet that you can't really tell what's what, and they get all pixelated like this does here, you've seen a JPEG that's gotten too big generally, right? So you don't want to be serving that. It's pretty straightforward. I'm sure a lot of you are probably already pretty savvy to that anyway, but it's an important point to iterate. So if you're going to serve a bigger image, you probably want to start thinking about something like PNG. They're your two basic file types you can use to serve most things. There are all sorts of new file types like Web3 images and stuff like that. If you have a developer or someone, a designer in-house that can help you with this, can help show you how to do this, or can put those into place for you, that's awesome. If it's just you, founding team, you're figuring this out on your own, JPEGs and PNGs all the way, you'll get there, you'll get where you need to go. Serving them is the final one I haven't quite covered yet. So hosting plans are important, right? We haven't talked about hosting in this. We probably won't talk about hosting in this. Generally, if you're in a SaaS, I'm pretty sure you've definitely sorted out that you've got some pretty decent server-side hardware going on, right? Which generally is great because a lot of small business and things like that who aren't in your sort of area won't. But what you want to do is you want to put everything on a CDN if preferable. You want to show all this content like that, all the images and stuff on a CDN. CDNs just make it easier for that image to load, whether it's PNG or JPEG or whatever it is, whether you're in Africa or India or Antarctica or wherever. It just means that there's a server closer to someone that can basically show those images. So that's important. I always set that up. I'm not going to go too much deeper into setting up a CDN. There's definitely something that could be a whole course on its own, I'm sure. But think about that if you don't have one implemented already. All right, so that's the first point on image optimization. The third is on using original images. Google understands images, as I've said. Google understands that, a diagram of X is different to a diagram of Y, that sort of stuff. You want to use original images because you don't want to be showing the same stuff other people are showing. You want to be able to stand out, and you can actually get Google traffic from sharing and creating unique images, right? So you want to think about creating original images. For you, that could be a screenshot, that could be a whiteboard picture that you took because you're explaining a diagram that you couldn't, do yourself. That could be you creating something in Microsoft Word that you end up saving as a PNG and then uploading. So like one of those automatic diagrams that it creates and uploading that, that's totally fine, right? I find it's better to always try and serve original images to Google. Google likes it. It's good to sort of start getting that sort of original brandness involved as well. You don't want to be like just taking stuff from Shutterstock and Photoshop, from Shutterstock and Unsplash, and just posting it up there, using what everyone else does, because it doesn't keep things relevant to the content. It doesn't create anything or do anything for the user, for the reader, for your potential clients or customers or whatever. You want to make sure that you're creating something that is of use to what you're writing about. Writing about business and then putting a generic person in a business suit photo isn't very interesting. And it's sort of very 2001, to be honest. Nobody does that anymore. If you've got someone who can Photoshop and design and change it and make it fit a brand and make it demonstrate what you want, totally go nuts. But a lot of people don't have that ability. Even, if you could use Canva and do it and make it more relevant to your audience and make it demonstrate something, that's totally cool too. It's original image, even if you use a stock photo as part of that original image. But otherwise, I would say try and earn more on using as little stock imagery as possible. It also cheapens your brand if you use too much of it too. Everybody can feel it. Finally, we've talked a lot about images here, but this sort of works pretty well for most things in terms of multimedia. It's good to have multimedia stuff on your site, images, screenshots, video, podcast embeds, tables, all that sort of stuff, right? You want to be using all this sort of stuff where it makes sense to do so. Google will understand that if you're going to talk about something like this image size comparison for different file types, then it's going to understand that table should be shown. It's going to understand an image of a table. It's going to better understand an actual table embedded. So you can use all those things, and I would encourage you to do so. All those little things can be helpful. And the last but not least part of images that I hadn't mentioned here was alt text, right? Now, if you're not sure what alt text, it's basically shorthand for alternative text, and it's what shows up basically behind the image. So for people who are vision impaired, potentially disabled or blind even, they can't see everything on the screen sometimes, and what it was originally created for is to help these sorts of people understand, I say these sorts of people, which just sounds horrible, but I mean, it helps people to understand what's on the page when they're having trouble doing so, right? So if you ever accidentally turn on your screen reader where it reads everything you mouse over and stuff, some people have to use that all the time, and that's what that's for. So if they're scrolling down the content and the computer's reading it for them or helping them to understand it, they want to be able to understand this is a flower, a picture of a whatever type of flower this is, etc. So alt text is great in explaining the images that you have. It's also great for making sure that you add your keywords in. So, let's say I was going to try and rank a page with this flower on it, and it was called a dragon flower, right? I might put alt text like pretty pink dragon flower or something to that effect, that grows in South America or something like that. I have no idea what the flower this is, so if somebody knows, I apologize if I'm completely way off base, which I'm sure I am. So you could put this as the alt text, right? And it's basically hidden text that only Google and people who scroll over this these images will see. Now, this actually creates an understanding for Google of what the image is about and can help to rank your website. You don't want to put an exact match of your keyword behind this. You want to be descriptive. And if you're descriptive in this correctly, what you'll generally get is, it will be a benefit to your SEO overall, your on-page SEO. So make sure that every image that you serve has alternative text. Now, doing that's really easy. Pretty much every CMS, again, will help you do that. If you have someone who's building your site from scratch, they'll know how to code that in and make sure that you have alt text that's descriptive to what you're writing about to the page, right? So last factor, small one, but very handy to know. Moving forward, internal links. Now, we talked to the last video again about internal links, about content. You want to be internal linking. It's important to do internal linking, especially when you've got relevant stuff. If you don't have relevant stuff, it's okay to leave out a lot of internal linking. maybe your blog post or page will be relevant to a landing page or something else that you have on your site. You can have 1 or 2 internal links. That's fine. You don't have to have 15. You don't have to have 25. You can just have 1 or 2 where it makes sense to do so. But I would encourage internal linking if you have anything relevant. So there's a little example here of good internal linking versus poor internal linking. Now, when you start off writing, you won't have anything to internal link to generally, and you're going to start off looking poor. That's okay. As you expand out and write about topics that are relevant to you because you've done the keyword research, because you know what's important to your customers, you'll have all these pages you can internally link to, and it's really powerful to make sure that you're doing that. I've seen websites where we are not ranking really well, where we've got all sorts of backlinks and stuff like that. And what actually moved the needle for us, what actually got us from the bottom of page 1, maybe to the top 3 results in page 2, was going through and doing internal linking audit and having a look through our site, say, hey, does this blog post on this topic link to that topic? Because it makes sense to do so. The reason you internal link generally is because it makes sense for the readers, but also each page theoretically passes link value to other internal links, right? It lets Google know that, hey, there's a cluster of content around this one topic over here, and I want you to understand that. I want to understand these are related, and pass some link value between those 2 pages. So if one page, this page A here on the diagram, has 15 links, and page F maybe has 25, you might want to link those 2 together a little bit and just say to Google, hey, these are 2 related topics. I think that users would get something out of both of these things. And what it'll do is it'll say, hey, some of this 15 link value will go to page F, and page F with its 20 whatever link value will go to page A, right? And that's what that does. It sort of helps Google to understand better, create clusters of content, understand your website better, helps users to find the rest of your content better, and it will pass some link value. Now, where should you internally link is another question. In your content, that's preferable, right? Link in your content. If you're mentioning something else inside of like a paragraph somewhere, link it within the content. You can also link, as people do, the other relevant blogs at the bottom of a page. That's totally okay as well. But I find in content links really helpful. Number 3 here, internal links. So you want to link to 2 to 5 older pages you want to rank if you have relevant stuff, right? So it's really helpful to do that. I've already sort of mentioned this, I guess. Say you've written, basically, let's say you're at a position right now, you've written stuff, now you're doing this course, you're at this poor internal linking position, go back and add these links in and pay attention to your rankings and see how you may get some boost from that. You want to think about that consciously about your internal linking strategy and not be too over the top with it. I would say that 2 to 5 is good for most bits of content that are around 1,000 words long. If you're linking more than that, you're probably getting verge of getting a little bit spammy. But you make the call. There are situations where it makes sense, certain pages where it makes sense to do that. I would say caution first and slowly edge in if you're not 100%. Moving on to on-page factors, external links. So we already know that external links help pages to rank, right? Somebody linking to my site can help my page to go higher in Google. We know that. It can help you to go higher in Google by doing the external link as well and going the other way. Right? So what you want to create, although this is a bit of a diagram that you can see here more about internal linking, the concept works as well for external linking, right? So what Google wants to see is if I've got a page on England, I might link to Manchester, London, and Birmingham. Their city government websites, their tourism sites for those sorts of things, because I'm writing about England, right? Same as the page on France. I might do the same thing. Google wants to see that you're linking to them. You don't necessarily need a link back from everybody, and you don't want that necessarily, right? One-to-one links, if Google sees a page where every outlink has an inlink from the same spot, that looks really spammy. All you want to do is just be natural in linking out to those other sources. Make sure you do it. It shows trust, shows authority to Google. And again, aim for at least 2 to 5 outlinks. That's a rule of thumb for about 1,000 words or less of content. Aim for around about that. Again, you'll feel when it gets spammy. You'll feel when there's too many links on a page because you'll be scrolling like, oh, really? All these blue links showing up. If you wouldn't like to see that on another site somewhere, then don't do the same thing, right? It's pretty much it. It's very straightforward. Finally, we're on to technical, right? So we're on the technical on-page factors. So These are basically things like site speed, your HTTPS, and your mobile friendliness, right? They're the main three things that I want you to consider. We have covered most of this stuff already in the technical side of our course, but I want you to be aware of this in terms of page level, right? This actually all works on a page level as well. So while you may do an analysis of your site, of the whole website, and say, hey, I want to know if our site speed's good across the site, blah, blah, blah. Where you see it not working, you're going to go into that particular page and see which you can fix, right? So I'll show you some examples of how to do this and how to analyze this on a page level. So Google has this tool called Page Speed Insights. It's at pagespeed.web.dev, and I'll put this link for you in the slides here so that you can see this. Click it out from the slides, make it easier to find. Or you can just Google Page Speed Insights and it'll come up. Sorry, I'm losing my voice from these videos today. So you can see here, I've actually run their homepage through their own tool. And what this tool will do, will analyze it for all those factors that are important for Google in terms of speed and mobile responsiveness and all those little nitty-gritty things, and give them a score, right? So we went through core web vitals and then technical analysis. I won't go too deep, but basically this will measure core web vitals. So that's like basically the little bits and pieces that go into a fast loading website on mobile, a website that is usable on mobile, etc. And it'll go through the actual performance, the actual speed of loading things, right? And it'll give you all these sorts of details that you can go in, or better get your developers to go in and fix up, right? So if you're not sure how to do it, if you're not a technical founder, I would say run some of these, run this across the site. You can use a third-party tool where you can plug in the API for page speed into a third-party tool, and it'll give you all this data across your entire site. Send the data to your dev and say to them, hey, we need to fix up these pages that don't pass. So at a minimal, what you really want is you want the core web vitals assessment to be passed. That's what you want. You want the performance to be somewhere between like 60 and 100, right? 60 is generally a pretty good like low end range. I would say 70 to 100 is better. 70 or 80 to 100 is better, but don't aim for 100. It's almost impossible. This is their own website and they're at 96. So you don't want to aim for 100. Getting 100 will get you in this sort of technical dev loop that will just take too long of digging in, looking for problem, and fixing all sorts of little nitty gritty stuff. And ultimately the ranking benefit you'll get out of it won't be enough to justify the hours you put in. So make sure you get something decent, 70 to 100, somewhere in that range. If you have that for most pages, that will be more than enough. So I can see this is web dev, right? I'll show you some other big guys that you would expect to have it all dialed in. This is that help.salesforce page that we looked at that has that in the last video that had like 100,000 keywords ranking or traffic per month or whatever. You can see it doesn't pass it. It doesn't pass our core web vital test. You can see that all these factors are close to the red or in the red. And it couldn't really diagnose the speed issues either. So not great, but they're ranking, right? It's an important factor to consider, but it's not the only factor. And many SEOs, I think many people can place too much importance on making sure that this is 100 when you could get away with a 70 to 100 range. MailChimp, I just did MailChimp because I already had them open. You can see here, core web vitals assessment failed on mobile, right? You can see this here. For the most part, it's okay on the borderline here. That's green. You can see these two factors here, not so great. The mobile performance, terrible, right? You can see that, you know, they don't pass, and we know MailChimp ranks for a lot, right? So they're a big company. They know what they're doing in general, but not everyone's going to have this completely dialed in. I want you to think about this for your important pages, primarily your landing pages, and maybe your whatever your pillar pages are for blogs. So if you find that there's one that converts really well, it's really close to the bottom of the funnel, it's the one that you want people to see most of, because that's the one that's going to convince them, and you find in your data that it does that, make sure you lock this in for that at the very minimum. Anything else, you want to get in that good range and just leave it alone, but you want to lock it in for this one as much as possible. Again, doesn't mean lock it in means 100, but it means get in that really good range, as good as you can make it, without spending, say, like, you know, 20 hours and you know, $5,000 in getting it there. If you've got these problems across the entire site, definitely fix it. But on a page per page level, go for risk and go for cost benefit, and the benefit really is 70 to 80. You're in benefit land. cost should be, generally, hopefully as little as possible. So that's it, I think, for what we've got for this particular. Yep, that's it. That's all we've got for this particular on-page factors module. Let's go back and just cover out some of this. So we looked at URLs as an on-page factor. They should be short, should have a target keyword in it, and you should optimize it for SEO. Make sure your site structure is optimized for SEO so that URL isn't too long, too unsightly, too ugly. You're putting all these subfolders in, etc. We look at keywords. Don't stuff your keywords into the page as much as possible. That's silly. That's things people stopped doing almost 10 years ago in SEO. If anyone tells you to do that, they are incorrect. Use your target keyword, although in the first 100 words and in those key places, that I listed for you on the slide. Use those LSI keywords, right? I've shown you how to find them if you want to do that through a tool like Ahrefs. Alternatively, write naturally, read what other people are doing, write naturally, and you'll get to the end. Title tags, front load it. Make sure you optimize it for CTR and use title tag modifiers. And then finally, make sure you update your meta description and make that descriptive and try and convince the click with your meta description. Content, make sure you wrap your blog post in a H1 tag and you use those subheading tags as well, moving all the way down. Show Google the importance and the relevancy between these topics or subtopics on your page. And make sure it's comprehensive, right? Make sure you cover the right things. Make sure you're covering off all the right sections and subsections and answering the main questions that people would have if they were to do a Google search and land on your page. Images, make them optimized, make them the right file type, make sure the size isn't any bigger than it needs to be in both kilobytes and in width and height, right? You don't want your web browser resizing a photo that is like 3,000 by 3,000 pixels when you only need to serve it at 20 by 20. So you can do that. It's very easy to do. Edit it in something, resize it in something. There's plenty of free tools out there. Make sure you do that. Use a CDN if you don't have one. Use original images and include other things, multimedia as well, not just images, but images is the main one, the easiest one, especially if you're bootstrapped. Links, we looked at links internally and externally. You want to be linking 2 to 5 internal and external links. So let's say you were doing both on a page, you would want to make sure that you say have 4 links maybe. 2 external, 2 internal. That's a good, maybe rule of thumb, but you don't want to have like 10, and you don't always have to have like 10 because you should have 2 to 5, right? You don't always have to have 10 on every page, but just try and hit those minimum things where it makes sense. Publish long content. This is a note to remind you to don't publish long content if it's not needed, right? Publish comprehensive content. Technical here, maximize site speed. Make sure you have a HTTPS site, make sure it's secured. Google wants to see it. Users want to see it. It's better for you, better for them. You'll rank better if you have it. And number 3, mobile friendliness. Make sure that your website is mobile friendly. We talk about this more in technical SEO side of things. If you've already looked at it there, then that will be no problem. But make sure that it's mobile friendly. And to do that, you can use those tools that I've showed you to see just how mobile friendly it is, right? Your site in most CMSs, Squarespace, Webflow, all that sort of thing will be naturally responsive. So it's already friendly and that it'll resize for a mobile screen, but you want to make sure that it's going to load fast and people, like, elements of the page won't move around into weird places when people try to use it on their mobile phone. That's it. There are on-page SEO factors. I'll see you in the next one.